There you go. Sorry about that. But it is not, there are no zoning changes. The document is a policy document. It has a component, it has some recommendations to expand single family housing, not eliminate it. And I don't know if someone on staff too could also please post the link to goal number 2, which is diverse and inclusive neighborhoods, where the policies are, but there's nothing about, there's been a lot of talk about eliminating single family zoning. There's nothing at all. The word eliminate is not in the plan document. So just, I'm not trying, the purpose of this is not really to try to change anyone's mind. It's really just to get accurate information out there on what the plan actually says. And then, you know, you as a neighborhood and as an individual can decide, you know, what your feelings are about those things. It's really a 2-part process in that the plan adoption then kind of gives us permission in the next step to go into what we call place type mapping. So every parcel of land in the city today has what we call like a future land use recommendation. So for example, Freedom Park neighborhood is predominantly, you know, single family housing. So we would translate that into kind of a more modern term, which is a place type, which many communities are using today throughout the country. And place type really just means not just land use in terms of 2-dimensional, you know, it's a house or it's a residential property. It also gives you kind of more of an idea of, you know, how does it fit on the property, those types of characteristics. And probably more importantly for like, it's not just retail, but if it's a neighborhood center, kind of size and heights and, you know, all of those kinds of things. So it's kind of land use plus is kind of what we would say. The implementation for that would come in the Unified Development Ordinance, which is being updated at the same time, and that contains the zoning regulations. So following the place type mapping, the new zoning ordinance would be adopted, and then the zoning mapping would be a separate process. Both of these processes, I think it's very important to say too, would continue to include very robust public engagement. So like on the place type mapping side, that's, you know, tentatively scheduled to happen over the summer and into the fall. There would be a minimum of 45 different community meetings. And that would be kind of on a smaller scale, breaking the city up into kind of sub areas rather than what we're doing right now, which is kind of citywide engagement. So I hope that provides a little bit more. And let's see, there's some links in the chat and about what I'm talking about, and we're happy to email those to you after this session if that would be helpful.
That'd be great.
Kathy, can I add to that?
Yeah, please do.
Just to add to the kind of the why it's being proposed, the fact that we have an affordable housing challenge in our city, and during the visioning process with the plan, we heard from a lot of residents that we needed to provide more affordable options or broaden the base of housing types. So that one policy to permit additional housing types throughout the Charlotte neighborhoods would help get at that affordable housing problem. So I add that as to the why it's even proposed.
And the affordable thing too is a very broad issue. So affordable in one area may be different than affordable in another. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Another thing, I'm glad Catherine brought that up, is I've heard some talk too about this plan changing homeowner association regulations or deed restrictions. And that's outside of the purview of local government. So it doesn't affect those at all either.
Okay. I understand there are court challenges to that going on now though, too.
I have heard wind of that, but they're not court challenges that come from the city.
Okay.
Yeah. Trying to think of some other, kind of things. Another important thing to kind of mention is that North Carolina recently passed legislation too that kind of mandates that there be a comprehensive plan in place if you have zoning and other land development regulations. I think it's statute 160D. So, and lots of other states have this type of legislation. So that's something additional that adds to the whole process.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
I can say that I've heard the same kind of thing. I ran a meeting today for in Derrida. We actually had the most people on the meeting, 18. Then you know, we average when we were meeting in person, we got to about 18, and then on Zoom it's been fairly small. But yeah, definitely a lot of concern about sort of this thing that's out there about the threat to single family homes or to the zoning districts. I understand that that's not in this document at all, and I have actually been an ambassador, not that I've been participating as well, certainly since everything's gone virtual and just everything works differently. So I've kind of followed the process from the beginning. I think when I went through Planning Academy, there wasn't even talk yet of a comprehensive plan, but certainly there was talk of redoing the ordinances to be more unified. I mean, it's a UDO, it is unified. And one talk that I heard that was very helpful was Mitch Silver, I think was his name, who I'm sure you can find his talk, but it was basically describing Charlotte, I mean, as a deal-making city, and just how developers, nothing is predictable the way things are right now, and everything seems to be negotiable. And anyway, I'm starting to ramble, but the single family hot button issue for sure is all I'm hearing. I'm a realtor as well, so I'm hearing that from my clients, from fellow realtors. Everybody's buzzing with this idea that there's going to be no more single family, and yeah, I think that is going to be the challenge. I listened to the city council meeting today, which was held last Monday. I didn't attend, but I saw some of the social media posts that emerged from that. So today I listened to the whole meeting, and kind of surprised me that a lot of our council members apparently don't really know why this whole process started, what the goals are, and obviously they're hearing from their constituents the same way I am. Not that I have constituents, but I'm in touch with a lot of people, and we talk about housing because I'm a realtor. So I know they're hearing from people. Everyone seems to be waking up, even though it's been in the works for several years. I don't know if I've got anything helpful to add, except that communicating about that single family piece, I think, is going to be key, because it's something, it is a hot button issue, and it is something very special about the lifestyle in Charlotte that attracts people here. And so, yeah, we just have to. Sorry, I've got a cat who wants to be in and then she wants to be out.
Hey, Kathy, if I could ask a question. Are people seeing it, to either one of you, because what the plan has and what's proposed in the ordinance is really just to allow people the flexibility within the context of their existing neighborhoods, if they have the room, if it fits in the context, to add, an accessory dwelling unit, which exists in a lot of homes now, in a lot of neighborhoods now. And it's really as a way of providing more of that flexibility. And people could see it as, I mean, that could be a future income generator. It could be for, your extended family. I mean, there's a lot of benefits for it, for the neighborhoods. And in many ways, in many neighborhoods, you won't even notice it's there. So I mean, and in terms of the context of the existing neighborhood, maybe some of that information is not really getting through to
Mm.
the larger community.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say for sure that that's how I try to explain the positives, really, because I'm 55, and if I want to kind of stay in my neighborhood, eventually my house is going to be too big, and I meet clients like this all the time, who don't want to they don't want to leave their neighborhood, but there's
Mhm.
nothing other than a big single family house in the neighborhood. So yeah, it
Yeah.
solves the problem. It does give that flexibility. It's just communicating that whole idea. And you see it popping up all over, as you say.
Yeah.
There's quite a few actually, Jack, near Freedom Park. I can think of some locations on Princeton and some other places. Mainly, I'm thinking of Princeton, right at Jameston, and maybe it's Sterling. I'm not sure. Where there are single family, you can do that today on corner lots in some zoning districts, and there are examples of that. And to what
Well-
Alberto's saying, I mean, the key is that it meets the same setbacks and height requirements as the single family homes do, and the massing is the same, so you don't really notice, unless you really take the time to look, that they're duplexes.
Well, and most of I live on Linway Drive, which sits between Floral and Cumberland.
Mhm.
And my home is one of only two on the block that hasn't been knocked down and replaced by a McMahon. Developers want it for less than the value of the land, the tax value of the land. And it's probably a tear down because it's only 1,300 square feet on a $500,000 lot at tax value. And most of the McMansions that are going up in the neighborhood, and I'm thinking Linway, Worthington, Ideal, Floral, Cumberland, have garages with upper level apartments, studios in them. And you're right that it's not really noticeable, but in cases like that, I don't have a problem with it. But if you're going to put a multifamily dwelling in the middle of a block, my next door neighbor with $1.5 million house is going to be a little annoyed. And I can understand that. And I'm of the opinion that if you eliminate the single family ruling en masse, you're going to introduce an uncertainty in the market that is probably going to slow Charlotte's growth. And I'm guessing part of the aim of all this is to increase the density.
Well, we do over the next, this is a 20-year plan. So over the next 20 years, to accommodate the population growth that we anticipate, there does have to be some density increase, but it's not, it's not within a single family neighborhood. Putting multifamily, that would be in a place type that we call N2, neighborhood 2, which is kind of where you would, where it can be best served. So near neighborhood centers or activity centers, on your busier roads, your arterials, those types of locations, not in the middle of a single family neighborhood. The proposal is, again, just expanding the options within single family neighborhoods for what we call like the missing middle housing for duplexes and triplexes that meet the same standards as a single family home.
Right.
And not have parking in the front and all those types of things. And I think some folks are looking for the specifics to be in the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan is really a broad framework. And so those specifics would come through the zoning side, and they're being written into the zoning side. A lot of the frustration today around our zoning ordinances, the districts we have today are old and they don't meet what current development patterns are. So what ends up happening is we have all these conditional rezonings that then neighborhoods and others have to spend a lot of time on. The developers don't have certainty in terms of what the rules are, and neighborhoods don't have certainty in terms of what can be built. So then, to Teresa's point, it becomes this negotiated process, which is really making a deal. And it's very time consuming for neighborhood folks who really don't have time to spend on that and resources, and have to oftentimes ramp up to kind of educate themselves on what they're even negotiating. And it's expensive on staff side because there's a lot of extra stuff that goes into the reviewing conditional plans. And it's expensive for developers because they have to spend extra time and money as well. So the place type concept really kind of gives you more certainty as a neighbor. Okay, what exactly could be built in my neighborhood? How tall is it? You know, those kinds of things. And then there's a zoning district that's paired with it that kind of ensures that those things are what you're going to see when the project is built. So it kind of, we're doing all that work that folks were having to do on a piecemeal basis up front right now to give everyone the same development standards across the city.
Okay. Well, I've been here since 1975. And for the most part, I like the way East Boulevard and more recently Scott and Kenilworth have developed. So, you know, if they stay along the main arteries, I'm good with that. I can understand the 10-minute commute objective to mass transit. I think that's great. My concerns are affordable housing and the single family restrictions, changes.
Sure.
At the time that I got involved with this and listening to Mitchell Silver, Raleigh, I think, had just gone through, and I believe Huntersville has had a UDO. Am I right on that? And I'm just wondering how it may have played out. And I don't know if it may be that it doesn't include this kind of density being allowed on like an R3 lot, or I mean, it's not going to be practical in some of the single family areas where the lots are too small to add anything much at all. So I wonder really if that's not another point. It's just how much of Charlotte is actually possibly going to see a lot of change. I know what people perceive, you know, as they drive down Central Avenue or the Kenilworth and those kind, they're seeing these mushroom apartments just mushrooming everywhere. And it's out here in the university area as well. And so I think that's the perception, is that that's going to just come crowding into the neighborhoods, which is, that is not what's going to happen. It wouldn't even be permitted really under the place types.
That's right. And that was really the fear too with the transit station areas, was that intensity of development would spill into neighborhoods, and Dilworth was one as well, because there's some stations along the Blue Line that are right at the edge of Dilworth. But to your point, I mean, it's really focused around where it can be best served, which is kind of right at the station area. So that intensity is appropriate at those locations, but not further out. And I think, I don't know if it's possible, you all, to post, we had a conversation with Paul Magoosh from Minneapolis, which last year at this time, Minneapolis had adopted their comprehensive plan, which had the same sort of recommendations around expanding single family zoning. And so kind of a year later, he came back via Zoom, because that's what we have to do these days, to kind of talk about what their experience has been. And to your point, Teresa, they haven't seen, this, I think what folks fear, that suddenly developers are going to be coming in and buying people out of their homes and, putting up duplexes.
I wonder how we compare to Minneapolis, though, because everybody is coming to Charlotte. I don't know that they have that same in-migration problem, or not problem. I don't see it as a problem at all, but it's a challenge for sure, because that people are going to live somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. And they're much smaller land area wise too, which is the difference from Charlotte. So it's much more urban community, generally speaking.
Yeah, so Charlotte has had it's a problem really, because we've just sprawled instead of actually trying to be a little more thoughtful in how we grow. But that's what we have now, because we have no boundaries, really, no like rivers and other towns, really just they're little towns. We can just grow right up to them.
Well, I think that's part of the attraction of Charlotte, though.
Yeah.
Is the fact that you can get a nice piece of property close in to the city. I know that's what attracted me 47 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 1975 is actually the last time a comprehensive plan was done for the city of Charlotte. So
interesting.
So Maddie has posted in the chat to links to the community conversation series and the specific one with Paul Magoosh. Also links to our ambassadors toolkit, and we can email these to you as well, which
yes, that would be helpful.
A lot of good information that's already prepared for you, so you don't have to, you can include it in your newsletters or whatever other type of correspondence, social media, all kinds of different things.
Yeah. So these community conversations, there are recordings of those as well?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So right now, we've had 3 of those, which kind of bring in folks from around the country. The first one was Kimberly Driggins, who is currently in Washington, D.C. and had worked on the Washington, D.C. Comprehensive Plan and worked in Detroit, Michigan, more on the implementation side of their plan. And she talked about her experiences around those 2 projects. Paul Magoosh was early February, and he spoke about the experience in Minneapolis with their comprehensive plan, and then now kind of they've rewritten their zoning ordinance as well. So it's a similar process to ours. And he's kind of talked about what the experience, kind of the genesis for why the project and why the expansion of single family housing, and then kind of what their experience has been over the past year, 18 months really almost. And then next month, or not next month, this month, next week on Tuesday, we'll hear from Charlie Hales, who was the former mayor of Portland, Oregon, and is currently a planning director with HDR, which is a national planning and engineering firm. And he'll talk about his experiences in Portland. He's going to focus a little bit more around the concept of the 10-minute neighborhood, which is also goal 1 in our plan. So if you need us to send the information for Charlie's talk on Tuesday, I think it's at 11:30 in the morning. So they generally run about an hour and a half. We're happy to do that as well. We can send you that. then we're doing a lot of these type of listening sessions in small and large groups. We'll do them individually, and we'll do them with, other neighborhood groups. So we had one last week with several folks from Myers Park, had a couple today that were individuals kind of wanting to just share their comments. And those have been both neighbors and folks in the development industry as well.
Yeah, I've also been participating in the Ordinance Advisory Committee, which has been, and of course it's been all virtual, which is a very different experience than initially when we were meeting downtown. But that group, those meetings are good, I think. Well, I don't know. I love this stuff. I'm very interested, but I realized that not everybody does, and that's it really is a challenge to talk and get people on board with stuff like this, because it just, people don't want to spend the time and just are not interested and really just want to know how it's going to affect them in their
sure.
space and their property.
Yeah, and it's difficult to explain the difference between policy and regulation. So you're kind of experiencing both sides of it as a ambassador and stakeholder on this process, and then also a stakeholder on the Ordinance Advisory Committee. You're kind of crossing over both pieces. And it can be very confusing if it's not something you do on a daily basis.
Yeah. And I mean, I have trouble communicating even what I'm learning. Like, I understand it reasonably well, but I find it hard to explain. So that's a bit of a problem for me.
So other thoughts or concerns or questions that you all may have? I think we've got things that we'll be sending you that are in the chat. The link to Charlie Hale's conversation next week, the Ambassador Toolkit information, links to Paul Magoosh's community conversation, and the others that are on our Facebook page, and a link to the e-plan, which is the actual plan document. Are there other things that you maybe have questions about, or things that could be helpful to you in communicating with your neighbors and others?
Does the plan include transit system planning?
So the Silver Line, which is the current transit plan that is being studied, which basically goes from Gastonia all the way into Belmont all the way into Union County. That's the scope of the study right now. Is a separate process. There's a lot of separate things that are going on, but they're kind of all within the umbrella of the comprehensive plan. So they're integral to a lot of the goals and recommendations that are in the plan. So they're in there by reference and in some of the policies, but the actual specifics around them are in another project. But really what this document does is kind of bring all those things together and make sure that our goals are aligned as a community, so we're all moving in the same direction. And Maddie has just, thank you, Maddie, posted goal 4, which addresses trail and transit and trail oriented development.
Okay.
So from a land development perspective, that's what goal 4 is focused on, which is dependent on transit.
Okay. All right. And anything on homelessness or low-cost housing?
Well, there's, the inclusive and diverse neighborhood, which is goal 2, which kind of gets at providing a variety of housing choices. Around homelessness, that's really something more in the county's purview, but we have spoken with different homeless and other service providers kind of in that same space. And as part of developing the plan recommendations, And Maddie also posted goal 3, which is housing access for all. As part of these community conversations in the last phase that we were in, and early in this phase, I believe as well, we had kind of small focus groups with folks that we weren't hearing from. And the homeless population is obviously one that it's a real challenge. So we kind of reached out to folks that are providing services in that particular area to make sure everything that we have in our plan is lining up, and if there's anything on the implementation side that we need to put in there. So we've kind of gotten at it that way.
Okay. I kind of feel like the whole tent city thing was a black eye for the city.
Sure. Yeah.
That's all I had.
Okay, Teresa, did you have anything else or any other questions? I don't want to keep you all, but we certainly want to give you the space you need to ask any questions or make any comments. And we want to provide you with good information to follow up with.
No, I'm glad to be reminded of some of these presentation tools or info sheets and brochures and things that will help me to explain better. I don't think I really have anything else to add now.
Well, we thank you all for your time this evening, and we will follow up with an email, and we'll put all of these links that we posted in the chat in there. And also, Maddie, if you don't mind putting my email and Alicia's email, if there's anything that comes up, we'll, and you want to email us, feel free. And if we need to do another one of these sessions as well, we're happy to do that.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
All right, thank you all.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for your time too. Nice to meet you, Jack.
Likewise. Take care. Bye.
Bye.